What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Week 6 in the NFL. I've got my rundown of who I think's going to win this week. I got my money line picks coming up, but first, let's do a little recap. We went 7 for 7, batting 500. This week, we'll look to get that number up to about the 750. I'm going to try to get us back into the double-digit wins on the plus side. Let's go. First game was a Thursday night game. We had the 49ers taking on the Seahawks. And I was pretty much right about it being a Brock Purdy get-right game. But it didn't come without sweat because Geno and the boys did try to come back at the end and win the game. But ultimately, he threw too many balls to the other team. So, chalk that one up as a win. So, let's start off with Sunday morning games. First game is going to be the London game, bright and early. Set your alarm clock because this one doesn't start at 10. It's early. We got the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams through 4 or 5 weeks has looked pretty good. Last week he threw for 304 yards and 2 touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence had 371 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. The Bears' pass defense through 5 weeks has only allowed 2 touchdowns and have gotten 6 interceptions. The Jags' defense, on the other hand, has last week allowed Flacco to go for 359 yards and 2 touchdowns, which lets their defense have 10 touchdowns to opposing teams this year. Will the Jags' Trevor Lawrence, Christian Kirk, and Brian Thompson be able to score points on a tough defense? Or will Caleb Williams, DeAndre Swift, and DJ Moore win the day? Maybe Cole Kmet can have a good game too. I think Chicago's defense is too good, so that's why I'm backing the Bears to win. Next, we got the 3-2 Bucks taking on the 2-3 Saints. Honestly, I'm going to keep this one short and sweet. Last week, Derek Carr got hurt, and without Derek Carr, I don't think the Saints have a chance to win this game. Last week, Baker Mayfield only had 180 passing yards, but he went 19 for 24 and had 3 touchdowns. So, just about every time he threw the ball, someone was catching it, and it ultimately ended with points being scored. So that being said, I'm going to choose the Bucks for the win on this one. Next, we've got the Washington Commanders taking on the Baltimore Ravens. Both teams come off big wins. Lamar had 348 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 55 rushing yards. Derrick Henry ran the ball for 92 yards and a touchdown. Zay Flowers had 7 receptions for 111 yards, but no touchdown. For the Commanders, Jaden Daniels had 238 yards and 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and 82 rushing yards last week. Brian Robinson Jr. had 2 touchdowns on only 18 yards rushing. Austin Eckler carried the ball 6 times for 82 yards. Terry McLaurin had 4 catches for 112 yards. They have an explosive offense, and they do it in very little plays. Stylistically, both of these teams are very similar. It's going to be about who's more dominant, and again, who has the better defense. I think Baltimore has the more proven defense, and so that's why I'm going to back the Ravens to win this one. Next, we got the Cardinals taking on the Packers. Both teams come off bounce-back wins. Kyler Murray having 195 yards passing, 1 touchdown with 1 interception, and 1 rushing touchdown. James Conner had 19 carries for 86 yards, and Trey McLaurin had 6 receptions on 53 yards. Michael Wilson had 5 receptions for 78 yards. And rookie Marvin Harrison Jr. had 2 receptions for 36 yards. For the Packers win, Jordan Love went 15 for 26, 224 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Josh Jacobs ran the ball 19 times for 73 yards and a touchdown. Tucker Kraft, their tight end, had 4 receptions for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was on fire last week. And Jaden Reed had 4 receptions on 78 yards. This could be another high-scoring game. My gut says Cardinals. Analytic brain says Packers. But I've got to stick with my gut. And I think this is going to be an upset win for the Arizona Cardinals. So that's why I'm backing Arizona for the win. Next, we've got the Colts taking on the Titans. Last week, Flacco had 359 yards and 3 touchdowns on a tough loss to the Jags. Not much was going with their run game without Taylor, and he'll be out again this week. So they're going to have to focus on their passing game. Josh Downs had 69 yards. Michael Pittman Jr. 37 yards and a touchdown. But Alec Pierce had a blow-up game. 3 receptions for 134 yards and a touchdown. So hopefully they can do the same again. On the other side of the ball, the Titans' offense has really been struggling. Will Levis got hurt in last week's game, so Mason Rudolph had to come in, and it looks to be he'll be starting again this week. Last week, he went 9 for 17 with 85 yards and no touchdowns. Tony Pollard had 88 yards rushing, 1 touchdown, and Tyjae Spear also had 39 yards rushing and a touchdown. The Colts, coming off a tough loss, look to bounce back to their winning ways against a Titans team young and battling injury. So that's why I'm picking the Colts for the win. Next, we got the Houston Texans taking on the New England Patriots. Last week, C.J. Stroud went 28 for 38 for 331 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. Cam Akers ran the ball 9 times for 42 yards and 1 touchdown. Stephon Diggs had 6 receptions and 82 yards, and Nico Collins had 2 receptions, 78 yards, and 1 touchdown. The Patriots last week, in their loss, Brissett went 18 for 34, 160 yards, and no touchdown. The only score was Ramondre Stevens, who had 12 carries for 89 yards. The only action on the receiving side of things was really Demario Douglas. He had 6 receptions on 59 yards. I think the Texans are a more complete team, and the Patriots honestly look to be rebuilding again. So, that being said, give me Houston for the win. And a little sneaker bonus bet, I think they're going to cover the spread this week. Moving on, next we've got the Brown Bag Browns taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. Another short and simple one. The Browns are horrible this year with Deshaun Watson, and the Philadelphia Eagles, if they're healthy, look like a playoff contender team. So with that being said, I'm just going to go with the Eagles on this one if you want to look up the stats and see what you think, but I'm not even going to go over it. Eagles for the win. Next, let's move on to the LA Chargers taking on the Denver Broncos. Last week, the Chargers had a tough loss. Herbert went 16 for 27, 179 yards, and 1 touchdown. J.K. Dobbins had 14 carries and 32 yards. Ladd McConkey had 5 receptions, 67 yards, and a touchdown. Josh Palmer only had 3 receptions on 36 yards. The Broncos won against my Las Vegas Raiders. Bo Nix was 19 for 27 and had 206 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown. Javonte Williams carried the ball 13 times for 61 yards, and he also caught 5 receptions for 50 yards. Josh Reynolds and Jalen McLaughlin both had receiving touchdowns. This is a tough matchup. Both teams have good defenses, holding opponents to under 19 points per game. And Herbert looks to be battling injury again. And also the offensive line looks to be hurt as well. One of their linemen's coming back, but they also have one lineman on the other side out. So for those reasons, give me the Broncos for the win. Next, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on my Las Vegas Raiders. Last week, Minshew didn't look that good. 137 yards, 2 interceptions, and no TDs. The only shining spot was Brock Bowers had 8 receptions, 97 yards, and a touchdown reception. The Steelers are led by Justin Fields, who last week had 131 yards, 2 touchdowns, one of which going to Pat Freiermuth, who had 3 receptions on 22 yards. Both offenses struggle. Both defenses are solid. Which offense will get going? Of course, I'm going to back my team, the Las Vegas Raiders, for the win. Raiders! Let's go! Raiders for the win. Keep the season alive. We have to win this game. Moving on. Next, we got the Atlanta Falcons taking on the Carolina Panthers. Last week, Kirk Cousins threw for 509 yards, 4 interceptions, and 4 touchdowns and 1 interception. His main targets being Mooney and London, who both had more than 100 yards and multiple touchdowns. Drake London had 2 touchdowns, and Mooney had 1. The Falcons' offense is rolling. And honestly, last week, Andy Dalton showed that he still could be a backup quarterback. He had 136 yards and 1 interception. Bryce Young might play this week because he went into the game and didn't have many penalties and kind of had some stuff going. So we'll see who plays the quarterback position for the Panthers. Because we don't know about their offense, that's why I'm going to pick the Falcons to win this one. Seems kind of like a no-brainer. Next, we got the Lions taking on the Cowboys. The Lions, coming off a bye week, will be rested with all weapons healthy. This could be a fun game to watch if you're a Lions fan. The Cowboys are at home after a close win over the Steelers, with Dak having good stats, so kind of. 352 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he also threw 2 interceptions. Rico Dowdle looked good again with 87 yards on 20 carries, but couldn't find the end zone rushing, but did catch a touchdown pass. CeeDee Lamb couldn't find the end zone, but he had 5 receptions for 62 yards. I think this week he could potentially find the end zone this game. The last game for the Lions, they scored 42 total points. That's right, 42. Yeah. Against a tough Seattle defense. Goff threw the ball for 292 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jamar Gibbs and David Montgomery combined for 118 yards and 3 touchdowns. This offense is stacked. I see this being a high-scoring game, but give me the Lions to win this. Detroit for the win. Next, we got the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the New York Giants. The Bengals are 1-4, but they've lost close games against tough opponents. The Giants are coming off an upset win against the Seahawks, but which Daniel Jones will show up? Last week he looked good, 257 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. The week before that he had no touchdowns, 281 yards, and an interception. Joe Burrow has been consistent uh, except for week 1. Last week he threw 5 touchdowns and had 392 passing yards. Hopefully he can stay consistent. And that being said, I'm backing the Bengals to win this one. Finally, we've got the Monday Night Football game. The Bills taking on the Jets. The Bills go to New York after losing a tough matchup to the Texans. Josh Allen had 131 yards and only 1 touchdown. Cook ran for 82 yards on 20 carries and also had a touchdown. And Keon Coleman had the only receiving touchdown on a 49-yard catch. The Jets have struggled all year, even though on paper they should be a dominant team. Rodgers had 244 yards and 2 touchdowns last week, but he also threw 3 interceptions. The last one being the very end of the game, which iced it for him. It's the battle of the troubled QBs, in my opinion. Who will win this one? Another tough matchup, but with the coaching drama over in New York, I'm going to have to stick with the Bills. Give me Buffalo for the win. Those are my picks. Fingers crossed we can have a clean sweep this week. I think I found the right upsets. So let me know what you think. Hit that like button. And if you haven't, tell your friends. Subscribe for more picks. And keep an eye out. I've got my favorite players to score a touchdown. I've got my team total bets. And I'm going to have a player props video and a same game parlay on the Lions-Cowboys game. Down in the comments, let me know who your favorite team is. You know me, I'm always rocking with the Raiders. So hit that like button, leave a comment, and let's win some money. Much love. Bearded Bandit out. Let's go Raiders!